Many thanks for sticking here with us. Our next guest, if I may, is a big fish, both in media and, of course, as an Igbo leader. He is Nze Okwane Nkama Jr. He is the Okulora of Afikpo and the Secretary of Ohaneze Election Committee. He'll be talking to us. We're going to be having a discussion about the Igbo nation in search of leadership. Good morning, Nze Okwane Nkama Jr.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, and Isalachi.
Asalamchi. Dalurinne. Thank you so much. All right, so let me just put this out there that you're here to educate us. So it's not much of an interview, it's much of a student-teacher kind of an engagement, because you're like an encyclopedia of information when it comes to the Igbo nation and things that have to do with the Igbo as a community. Okay, but before we go into that, yesterday was the election, the Ohaneze election, which of course you served as the secretary of the election committee. Tell us exactly how it went, the process that brought about the new leadership, in Ohaneze, please.
Well, let me say, I hope I'm not feeling very flattered.
No, please.
To say anybody is an encyclopedia.
No, please don't be flattered.
Okay, so now, getting to the question. Yes, this is one election. By the way, this is my third or fourth time of serving in Ohaneze election committee.
So I was right.
Yeah.
You're an encyclopedia.
No, don't be too sure. So it was a process that was a little different from others.
How so?
How? Because the ones we have had, we didn't have a situation where we were under the pressure to elect a new leader. It's a short period. And we have never had a situation where we had a president general who had only 27 days to function and then elect a new leader as a replacement. So those are the things that made this particular election process very different. Then we'll give kudos to the president general that accepted to run only to, function for 27 days. Nze Fidelis Chukwu Ozichukwu, KSS, KSM.
Wow.
Yeah. So for accepting that was to complete the tenure of Imo State. Because in Ohaneze, these things are rotated, especially the presidency.
We're going to get to the rotational arrangement.
Yeah, so his accepting to do that was very patriotic. We lost, it was Imo's turn since from 2021. It was Ambassador Obiozo, George Obiozo. And barely after a year in office, he died. Then Chief Emmanuel Iwanyanwu took over. And on July 25, the man died. That's last year now.
Yes.
And then was buried in November, leaving some kind of a lacuna.
Yes.
But it shouldn't have been if the Deputy President General of Ohaneze Igbo was there. Chief Graham was from Rivers. He was the Deputy President
Graham
General.
Douglas.
Yes, Graham. So, but the man died too. Obiozo's remains were still in the morgue when the man died.
Can I cut in a little bit to ask you just a brief question before we get into what we're discussing? What does the Constitution, what does the Ohaneze Constitution say about maybe a president who dies in office? Who is meant to take over the reins of leadership?
Normally, there will be a replacement. What you saw, what has, yes.
A by-election?
There will be something like that. So, but it must continue from the same state until the tenure is over.
Okay.
Okay, but Chief Graham was from Rivers. He was the Deputy President General. So what I mean by that, he would have held brief pending win, a new president.
So what went wrong? Why?
Because the man died.
Yes, he died. What happened with Chief Graham Douglas? Why?
Not Douglas.
Okay.
I can't remember his other name, but it's Chief Graham.
Graham. Okay.
Yeah. So, well, death came, and the man passed on. It was a very sad blow to the Igbo nation, to Ohanese in particular. And so, quickly, Chief Dr. Emmanuel Iwenyang, late now, was presented by Imo. And there was an election for that. The normal process that should go. And then he emerged and had all manner of ideas on how to move the Igbo nation and Ohanese forward. But you say, man proposes, let's use the street lingo. Man proposes,
God disposes.
God disposes. So, unfortunately, we lost him too, July 25. And we were buried on November 1, if I remember correctly, and the pastor. So he was buried. Now you see the lacuna hanging on. Luckily for Hanese, the Secretary General still there, but quickly, while the tenure of Imo supposedly ending on 10th of January 2025.
Okay, 25.
So we had 27 days. So the Imobi got together and called a General Assembly, from where decisions like
General Assembly is the highest decision-making body of the Ohanese.
Of course. The Imobi, then the NEC, the National Executive Committee, that will implement. You know, so it happened that they quickly had to feel, because there shouldn't be a lacuna in leadership or governance. So that was when they now decided that asked Imo. And lo and behold, we had the Fidelis Ozichukwu, who accepted, who was put forward by the Imo people. So, and December 15, or thereabout, he
assumed the position.
He assumed the position and had a mandate to ensure that election is held to the place. That is, it must go to where it should go.
It should go.
And it is River State. Going by the principles of rotation or zone.
Tell us about that in details. Let's have an understanding of what the regional arrangement is with the leadership of Ohanese.
Well, first of all, you want to know what are the positions.
Okay.
What are the positions in Ohanese?
Okay.
Which is very simple. I might not remember all of them, but the ones I remember, I'll tell you.
Sure.
We have the President General, we have the Deputy President General, then you have the Secretary General. These are very high principal offices. And then you have the VCs, the Vice President Generals. But by the Constitution, this particular position is supposed to be held by the presidents in the states, because every state has a president of Ohanese. So the Constitution makes it that the presidents there will now, when they come to...
So you can't come from the floor, general floor, to become a national PG of Ohanese. You must be a state chairman.
That's not national PG, VPG.
VPG?
Yes.
Okay.
VPG. So that is, and if you're VPG, you are the president in the state. So that you have a seat in the neck as the national executive.
Yes.
So that's the way it is. So, but there was some, do I call it an aberration, that made an election of other individuals to occupy that position of VPG. And the states. The state presidents were now another body altogether coming into the place. But it is believed that this is an end of what I call the dawn of an end to a critical era. What do I mean by that? The River State is the last in the 7 states. So this zoning that started in 2004 will end in River State and then take off again for the new era from Abia. I don't know whether you're following me.
Yes, so Abia, could you...
Abia is the next after Rivers.
Yes.
Because these things were done in alphabetical order. When these principles were...
Abia, Anambra,
in that
Ebonyi, Enugu.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all those things were done in based on the principles of, what do you call it now?
Oh, well, equity?
Yeah. Equity, so that every state will be represented.
Yeah.
And then have the feelings.
What's the tenure of a particular leadership in
4 years?
4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's talk about the election, because there were a lot of talks from different quarters. You know, why would Rivers State be considered? Because prior to this time, Rivers people would tell you that they are non-Igbos. So why would a Rivers person be trusted with, you know, the leadership of an apex socio-political group like Ohaneze? What is your take on this?
Okay, before I get into that, there's an angle of your question I didn't answer.
Okay.
You said the processes will pass through.
Yes.
To elect
the current
leadership.
I think we'll still get to that in the course of the interview.
Okay, so you're now asking why should people who say...
I'm not asking, I'm just saying people are saying that even post Civil War, people from Rivers, probably some people from Delta, will tell you they are non-Igbos. But then when there's probably, for lack of a better phrase, a juicy spot, they all of a sudden claim to be Igbos. Now, how do you make sense of that argument and the fact that Ohaneze is trusting a Rivers person with, you know, that position?
Okay. I clear my throat again. You know why clearing this throat is because this question is deep. I remember this our friend here, Arusiu. You know, when you ask me, I say, Mom, na juju muhu. So I can assure you that this question is deep. If you track down to history, you see how deep it is. If I tell you that from the 19th, during the transatlantic slave trade, okay, a lot of things happened in Africa. Okay. A lot of things happened in Africa. Africa was decimated. Africa was dealt with. Your ancestors, your grandfathers,
our ancestors
were sold out as slaves. And they were, Port Harcourt, Iwacha, was an outlet on the sea. And these slave drives were from the hinterlands. A typical example, you must know that King Jaja of Opobo from Igbo.
Yes.
So, and he survived it. He survived it, and being whom he is, he held his ground. There were so many ancestors that were sold out like that. And they couldn't track back from where they are or where they came from. And the Iwacha, that's the rivers, the beach now, the rivers, which is River State today, was an assembly ground because it was an exit point. So most of those Igbos that were sold off, when slave trade stopped, some of them could not be taken over.
More like what happened in Liberia.
Exactly. No, Liberia's case is that the slaves that were already sold out were brought in, were brought back from the American world. They were brought back. That's for Liberia.
Yes.
Then those from the United Kingdom in Europe were the first to be brought back, and they brought them to Freetown, Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone.
So that's why I have those names. You know, Monrovia is the capital of Liberia, and it was named after the president of the time, Adam Monroe. Okay, so that's different. But in this case, you have people who were sold off and they couldn't go, they couldn't be taken over. And they couldn't track, they couldn't get back. So they remained there. And now in those days, we hear maybe your people, elders will crack joke, you hear that kind of...
if it was in the days of slavery,
because you become something else. So some of those things happened. And now those crop of people became the ancestors of those you have there today. And the bitterness, the anger hasn't gone. generation after generation, it is straight, they never liked. So that was why. And when the war came, you find out that, let's use the present FCT minister. His name is Onyesom Nwike. Or what do you have there?
Yesom Wike.
Wike. So by trying to adulterate or scatter your name, would it change your roots? The answer is no. And that bitterness also came up shortly after the war. The property of your people were confiscated and said it is abandoned property. So the anger hasn't tamed or died down in any way.
But do you think this development has been exacerbated by the creation of states?
More of it too. So when these things start happening and you see your brother who see you that you never wanted them, you never wanted them in the first place, and you are there. And again, there is this thing about the Igbo, including them. This is sufferable attitude. Anywhere we are parapletic. We go anywhere and we conquer the place and remain. And when you are like Joseph, what happens? Won't your brothers plan to
sell you off?
so these were the things, and that anger is yet to die. Yeah. But in the midst of the Lord generation were lots. There were still some great men like Ella, Figo, who knew and were not interested, but they were persecuted for any reason accepting that now we will. But they refused to be cowed. Okay, so those things. Then as generations, populations are growing, all that is needed is let that anger go. Let that bitterness go. You are an Igbo man, you're an Igbo man. You're an Igbo by root, by origin. It doesn't matter what you think. After all, if you get inside Igbo, I'll give you a typical example. Inside us, when state creation came, we started hearing this story. Before, we used to hear Abuinu, Abuinu, right here. Then after the state was created, what happened next? So you now hear engine and non-engine.
All right, so it's obvious.
So it is obvious, but that doesn't change the fact. And that is why at the beginning of fashioning out the structure of Ohaneze and its scoop and span, our brothers in River State, don't forget it is not the whole River State. It is the Igbo-speaking people of River State that belong to Ohaneze. You get down to the western wing of it, west of the Niger, where you have the Delta. That one is a little more defined, Anyoma. So they are it, and that's where late Ambassador Ralph Uwechwe came from. So when it was their turn, you don't deny your brother what he has.
Now I told you that this is not an interviewer-interviewee relationship happening here. This is a teacher and a student relationship. So we are learning so much. And from all you have, I know, alluded to, it's obvious that the Igbo nation is in search of serious cohesion based off of some of the things that have happened with the transatlantic slave trade and others. However, what is the plan of the Ohaneze in effecting this cohesion? Yes, we've incorporated Igbo-speaking people from the River State and the Delta states. What is the plan really for more cohesion? Not forgetting that I feel that there are some Igbos even in Bayelsa states.
All over.
All over. Kogi too. So what is Ohaneze's plan for cohesion to bring the Igbo nation together?
Well, the plan has always been there. If you remember, if I quote late Senator Uchechukwu Merije, he will tell you that the Igbos are the only people in Nigeria that are true one Nigeria people, because they work with their hands, their legs, their heads, with their life,
and they can
to
incorporate
ensure that Nigeria survives. Okay, so the Igbos are all over the place. Now the Igbos in diaspora is different from the Igbos original. Okay, so the plan is very simple. To begin with, you define your scope.
Geographical scope.
Yes. So you get it right, then you begin to combing the rest. So that's why, given the last question you asked, can we trust these people with the leadership of the apex Igbo nation? And we say yes. Of course, there is an example. Ambassador Afuweche was one of the finest Ohanese president, and in fact, his coming brought about, because there was a split, a split echo.
Inclusion.
There was a split echo before his arrival, where Dr. Ikedife was at the other wing, and then Professor Joe Iruku was at the other, until these things came together, and Afuweche came to the center, and those things were collapsed. Now he played his part very well. Then after him came Ebonyi, which is my state. And my big brother came in there. Like Jonathan, a man of peace. So he held true. After that came Anambra. Of course, trust Ikukehe. You know, he was... You
said after Ebonyi, Anambra, where?
No, after Anambra, it came Ebonyi.
Ebonyi, okay.
Then after Ebonyi, that's why I'm saying you can trust Ikukehe. Inimitable gentleman with the oratory powers. Of course, he took Ohanese to a high dimension. Are you there?
Yes.
Then, before he got to the turn of Imo, and it is that standard that had been set that brought about, of course, George Obiozo was a great ambassador. And then Chief Emmanuel Iwanyan is Aheje Jemba. Of course, he's a great name in Igbo land. A man of substance with all manner of, himself. And now it is turn of Rivers. This question you were asking started coming. We heard all manner of rumors, but you don't act on rumors. All manner of noise making.
Dissenting voices.
Dissenting echoes all over the place. Then that gave room for some young men to agitate. Some put themselves forward, but there is a standard. If you don't forget, we are not talking about freedom fighting, or we are not talking about youth leadership. We are talking about a generation, that's a race.
Cohesion.
Before cohesion, a race of people, a stock of people that's global. Igbo is global.
Sure.
So when you're going to bring a leader, you must bring a global leader, a man who can command the honor and respect of people of this class.
Talking about that, Nze, what are some of the antecedents that actually give the winner, the crown at the end of the day? What were some of the things
that's what I'm getting. That's where I'm going to. Yeah, because now you had few names that came first after some shopping. Not us anyway. The people whose turn it is are the ones to show us
the eligible
candidates.
Potential leaders.
Then before the rest of the Igbo nation will join. It's not that it is their right to elect it going by the constitution, but they have to show this is. And when they fulfill, like you show your interest by buying getting the form, you fill it, come through screened. If we are sure you don't have baggages or all manner of things, and you are screened, and you meet the Igbo apex standard. First, and then Njepu. Where Ntozu, where Ikenga.
Could you explain this in English?
So some of these things are the core Igbo values. When we say Njepu, the global view of the person. Okay? When we say you're Ikenga, you're right. First of all, you must be Igbo. Whether it is in Rivers or in Jericho or anywhere, but you must be Igbo to qualify to get into it. Then two, your stature. What manner of man are you? What manner of character are you? You must, the Igbo values integrity. And Igbo man is not a lazy person. We are not slothful. Okay? So these are the small elements, I'm not going to elaborate further, that you look out before you patch leadership onto somebody.
Yeah.
Right from the Igbo State Union when it began. So to now, so that's the distance. And you bring a non-entity to be at the apex. Somebody will, things that happen in the places where if you have some kind of leader and he's leading people bigger than him, you know the implication. So now returning to the river side, that was why you had a name like the former Inspector General of Police, Okiro, coming into the place. And by the level he had attained, of course, you know he's fit for it. Okay? Now, this present man that eventually won it, Chief Azotambata, was a former senator. And then, of course, in terms of substance, I think he's a chairman of RCC. There's a construction company, he's a chairman of it. So, of course, he's a loaded man.
He's also a technocrat.
So, a good technocrat like that. And if it is not gossip, I'll tell you when these things came, people were looking out for people like Omehia, Odele, Chibika Mechi, and others. But some of them could not come up. Some of them could not come up.
Was it because of integrity issues?
No, not that they were disqualified. They haven't even come up. So there was that tendency of not sure whether, you know, deferring to probably what they know, we don't know. They are this side. What they know in their place, what they think, the psyche of the people. Okay? So it turned out that they didn't come forward. Then Mbata himself, that eventually came, was also like, okay, we'll come. But before him were my dear friend and brother, Uche Okuku, who was the secretary at the right time. And then Uche Okuku, as a secretary under Wood, was unable to conclude his tenure. There were a lot of problems that became so serious that he was suspended. Not by NEC alone, but by the IMOB. Okay? So for that to happen, a baggage. And he quickly ran to the dissenting voices and started campaigning that he was going to come. So, but even at that, me and other members of the committee, if he had bought his form and come forward, you go through the screening. If he was screened, if he was not screened out, or if he was allowed to go, why wouldn't he stand for it? Okay, so now Okiro came, and we said, okay, at least a great name is here. Is that all? Because there should be more than one for an election to take place.
Sure.
So there was one other man, I've never met him, says Omenazo. You know, so he came. Normally, you have to fit the stature, but suddenly Omenazo started moving towards his own angle. But we at the election committee, we're waiting. After all, as election committee secretary, we'll take note and I should have the documents.
Sure.
And then we had a screening committee too, different from us, who had their own assignment, to ensure that no Igbo who is qualified to run for this election is disqualified. To be fair to everybody and follow what the constitutional provisions dictate in doing these things. So, but none of them eventually surfaced. Then we started hearing Bata will come. So we've been hearing names until he comes.
Sure.
So we waited. And lo and behold, like Jesus Christ, and he said that he will come like a thief in the night.
The Lord.
So he came. And came, luckily, met how do I put it? He didn't come late. Because by whiskers, he would have been off it. But because he came, and the screening committee worked 48 hours to ensure. And you know how people scatter all over the place. So this one is coming, you buy your form, you send it. You have to wait patiently to go through those processes of getting all these things done. So when Mbata came, shortly we started hearing court case. There's a court barring Okiro from entering the former Inspector General of Police, entering the race. Some of us like, what's the matter?
Did you investigate to find out?
So we started hearing, he's not Rivers. He's not a Rivers man. He's this, he's that. And they took the court action. But Okiro rose to it. And as a gentleman, he tried to see whether he can vacate that restraining order. So, but before he could finish getting it done, the time, because we were under directive 10th of January. No 2-hour addition or subtraction from what Imobi has said. And our president, the now former president, Ozichukwu, brought his personality to bear on that. A great man of ideas and substance. And of course, let's say stubborn to it. Because he's a staunch man. He stands, he puts his legs down, it is this, it's this. And he said, now I'm given 27 days to do this, it must happen. And I'm not going to stay half a minute on this seat. So all of us were under pressure. We had less than 13 days to conduct this election. Something we usually plan for a year, months, and weeks. Well, narrowed down to days. If you look at some of us, we are stressed up because you have to stay and deliver if you're called to serve yourself. And we're about 87 of us in the election committee. So all in all, Mbata met all those. And the court bearing, and the fact that we did not see any of those other ones to be screened as to join that election. Are you getting the drift?
Yes.
So because it is soon, somebody will be in the court and talking stories, that breaks the heart. And it is, I say it, lies that break the heart. Instead of facing reality, they will cook it. It becomes a potpourri of all manner of rubbish. And then fling it to the people to believe. So none of them was told don't come.
Nobody was disenfranchised in any way.
Quietly, like Effiong said in his war surrender, that all those elements that made surrender difficult have quietly removed themselves from amongst us. And so Biafra surrender.
That's a great testimony. All right, don't forget, we're still talking about the Igbo nation and its quest for leadership cohesion. Don't forget, we're still here with Nze Okwaninkanma Jr. himself. Sir, this is one question that has been lingering in my mind for some time now. The issue of a new state for the Igbos. What is Ohanese's stand? And what are some of the socio-political implications of a new state? And then you find out that Delta State is saying, we need a new state. Imo State is saying, we need a new state. How do we come to a consensus as an Igbo nation? And what is the role of the Ohanese in all this?
Beautiful. At times, I like taking questions from historical perspective. Yes. State creation, which took off May 27, 1967, by Gowan, was a kind of action to curb a situation. We were in regions.
You were.
So when the war or the situations that led to the war came, and whether there's going to be war or not, on the 30th of May, 1967, that 27th May was when the elders of Igbo race gathered and directed Ojukwu, who was the governor of the East then, region, to declare this place because, like I think it is said, is there in the Bible, to your tents, O Israel, we have no inheritance in the sons of Jesse. That's the situation the Igbos found themselves. We had no more inheritance in the land, in this land, Nigeria. Declare, because some of you, this is now a folk tale, but ask your grandmother what she saw. Human beings quartered, and then it would be packaged and sent through the train so that you see it. You know, so every effort, no way. And then they declared it. Instantly, to narrow off the Igbo nation. One way to do it, take off the minority tribes from the core Igbo district that were part of the eastern region. Wow. So the states were created. East Central State, which is a core Igbo nation, and the core Igbo land. Wow. Then Southeastern State, the Efik, that is the Cross River people. South, yeah. Then River State. To remove the other Igbos or the other tribes that were part of the eastern region and narrow to concentrate on what should happen in deciding the war. That was the origin of state creation here. So it is something that did not just come through either political or properly agreed a consensus, or so that you have a plan for it. but as a war strategy. So that took off without fear of anything. I can tell you that when you lay a foundation of a building wrongly, that structure may not stand. Okay? And today, there is agitation all over the nation. More people want more states. But when these things were happening after the war, Ezogo Dr. Akanibi, and by the way, who is the founding father of Ohanese and Igbo, because his return from England brought about the Lagos Igbos holding a reception for him way back in 1934. And then it is from that reception they held for him that brought about unionizing. So a crop of patriots, Igbo patriots in Lagos.
But it wasn't called Ohanese then?
No.
It had to metamorphose
it was metamorphosed into that. It was just Igbo State Union. Igbo Lagos Union. Later it became, because when it started spreading, it became Igbo Federated Union. Then shortly before, when everything were already set, they now called it the Igbo State Union. Okay? Now after the war, meanwhile it was Irunsi that proscribed all those when he came to power. He needed the Nigerian nation to go through a unitary system.
How come Irunsi was Igbo?
Yes. And the very first general in Africa, not only in Nigeria.
We don't talk about these things so as much as we do, but go ahead.
So that's it. So he proscribed that, and the war came. After the war, Akanibian, I must get back, who was he was the former governor, and then Dr. Michael Okpara, who was the premier,
yes.
They survived the war, because most of our elders didn't survive it. But few of them that survived the war still started coming together, to offer leadership through a platform to the war-battered Igbo nation. So when the military administration then heard that these people are meeting, they proscribed it. They banned that meeting. But that didn't stop them. They continued until by 1976, they started enlarging the thing. By that time, tension and all that was already down. So that was how Ohanese started. So by 1976 to 1980, they had fashioned a thing. So Ibiam was functioning as the chairman, okay, with Chief Joromo Doji acting as the secretary. Then after them came Chief Egunwoko, Ono Egunwoko. And then, who's that name? The other man again, if I can't remember him, but he was the secretary. Okay. Now, Professor Mwabweze, Ben Mwabweze, who became the secretary from 1984 for 20 years. As a legal constitutional lawyer, he now gave structures to Ohanese, following the United Nations structure.
Template.
Yes. Cool. So that's why you now have Secretary General. You now have President. You now have, in that order. And the essence of President General is that there will be presidents at their wing. So this is at the apex. Okay, so through that, Ohanese came to where it is. And part of its listening is to offer leadership, protect the Igbo nation, and seek for our own rights, since it is one Nigeria. So now, coming to that state creation, when the agitation came, Ibiam said, sorry, I do not subscribe to state creation. How? Because you're going to scatter the Igbo. You're going to scatter the Igbo and put them, he used to call states nations, into small countries. And brothers will be seeing themselves from different perspectives. They are no longer, which of course you see is happening. Yeah. As an Ebonyi man, if I come to Enugu today, they say he's not an indigen. But as an Igbo man, where don't I serve? So when the elders talk, they should listen to. But there was a necessity. I remember it was Chief Christian Ono and others that said, nah, I know.
I actually I see his point.
Yes, so if they are scattering this country, let me borrow their words, scattering this country into states, then we shouldn't lose out. There should
especially from the political point
of
of
course,
view.
we shouldn't lose out. When they allot allocations, federal allocation,
Absolutely,
it becomes to one
absolutely.
state.
Sure,
so
sure,
let's
sure.
allow this thing. He said, okay, you give me a bunny. So, first of all, that was how he yielded, and Imo and Anambra came. It was not the, you know, knowing the difference between the political leadership and cultural leader.
Yes.
We'll come to that. Okay, so when they submitted that and gave us Imo and Anambra, Moritala came. And then that 1976 in February, the states were created. And then shortly after, Ebido, when you start, you don't start. So more states, the military are taking over and we're doing things as they like it. So states were coming.
By 1991.
By 1991, you now had Abia. So the Abia was insisting he has his Ebonyi. But it was at the airport when the elders said, nah, if we do that, we foreclose ourselves. Imo divided into two. Anambra divided into two. What do we have? We now have at least 4 states. Okay, so by 1996, when Ebonyi came and some other states, we now landed ourselves with the 5 states we have. Now the agitation has been on. We want more states. Not only you. Don't forget, if you take a look at the states, the Northwest has the largest.
Yes.
7.
7 states.
While others have 6.
6.
The Southeast.
5.
Now, more states should come. It becomes a political instrument.
How so?
Yes. Somebody will tell you, oh, I'll create state for you people. Everybody. But in Ohanese, there are certain things you don't. What am I saying? The due in other words, the palm wine tapper doesn't reveal all he sees atop the palm tree. So there are some. Now,
is this a welcome development for Ohanese or not? New state creation, is it a welcome development to Ohanese?
Hello, those who have 7 states, what happens to them? The states have been created, so we would need to have that balance. There should be that balance.
Yeah, but the agitation is where the states will come from within the southeast. Delta
that should be that now
is agitating.
Yes, that now
how do we get them to the table and get a consensus?
No, you've forgotten
Ada state too, and Suka.
So those are internal things the Igbo nation will look at.
Is Ohanese able to bring these people to the table?
For a long time, who else? Is it the governors or the political class? No, but the governors and the political class are part of Ohanese.
Yes.
So, but which channel or platform are they discussing this? Which other channel should other than the Ohanese? Okay, and it's Ohanese. Through there, all the governors of the Southeast belong to the Imobi. And whatever decisions that are arrived at Imobi, now is the General Assembly is called for endorsement. So I know that this is an agitation that has been on.
Yes.
So, and it's not very easy to tell Onyenka say so until these things are put together and a name given.
Yes.
But there is only one thing that is happening which the Igbo nation should watch. In leadership, there's a cultural leader, which you have the traditional rulers, and there's a political leader. Now, this thing came sometime in the early 20s, because I've been in this Ohanese as a little boy carrying bag for others. And I know there was a time we were beginning to have some kind of this thing between Ekweme and
Alex Ekweme.
Yes, and Dim.
Was it like a part also?
Something looked like that. So whose voice should be heard? And the elders now gathered, and I was privy to that. And I know how to solve that was simple. Ikemba, Iwu dike ọchịagha. As it is today, you are anya ndị Igbo. You are our Generalissimo. Chief Dr. Alex Ekwueme is the highest political office holder in Igbo nation. So if you put these things, and there should be a separation of powers.
Sure.
There should be separation of powers between the political leader and the traditional or cultural leader. Ikemba, you will be the Igbo nation's cultural leader. You are the dim. You're dim or the Mewojoko. Ekwueme all over the place is known GCFR as the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So, anya in politics. That was what was divided.
How are we tackling this?
Now, these things, they've all gone. That's the point I want to make here. They are all gone. This generation, what is the way forward? Amorphous. Every political leader becomes the chieftain leader in Ohanese and wants to dictate what is happening. See, when you are blindfolded and you're groping through a place, there is no way you're not going to enter the bush. But if you open your eyes and define your course, that is the point I want to make here. The Igbo nation should see this. It is benign. The people are not noticing it. But that's part of the confusion we have in the Igbo land.
How do we deal with this?
Now,
When was the phenomenon? How do we deal with this?
You see, it's a popular saying. Do I call it maxim? But it's not true. The Aro dynasty is the longest in Africa. One of the longest in Africa. Nri is a dynasty. So what you simply say is that it was a republican society. It's a republican society, and leadership resides with elders. A kind of what do you call it again?
Gerontocracy.
Gerontocracy. When leadership is in the hands of elders, and Awogaze, Toya, we will have no regrets, no apology to anybody that that's the way we indeed will. For this land to
part of being an independent mind.
Yes.
All right, Nze, there's no way we're going to have this discussion without touching a little bit on the state of things with Mazen and Bikano. Tell me, how far has Ohaneze gone to probably effect or recommend for his release? I feel many people do, actually. It's not my opinion only, but many people feel that it's going to bring about a lot of cohesion, you know, in the Igbo state. So, what are your thoughts?
First, but straight away,
okay,
actions have been on. I remember the late Iwanyamu also visited, and there were moves. But let me put it this way: from the beginning of Nnamdi Kano's travels, let me say it's a radical thing. Ibosio, you want to look at this proverb: Amara Achoaja, or Wonsi. Does it make any sense to you? Wrong definition will give you
witchcraft.
So that is it. The young man came, and his approach, his manners, on his agitation, which was not, he was not a beginner anyway. It was an Owazurike somewhere.
Owazurike, yes.
I came down, and those things were happening. And Ohaneze Ndibo, I was aware of, and I was part of, and had been part of, gave support for anything that will bring unity, advancement, and cohesion of Ndibo. If these ones were on, fine. But beginning with Owazurike's own, the name became a problem, because you can't have a sovereign state in a sovereign state. So movement for the actualization of the sovereign state of Biafra, that was what that in Masop.
Masop.
So that was where the problem, Mahmoud, if I might manufacture this particular one.
One of them. Oh my goodness.
So
there's no English words even explained.
So now, if it is where the problem lay,
yeah.
Okay, so that was for him. But after all said and done, he passed through his own incarceration, and later, the agitation never stopped. Nnamdi came like a Joshua, because Wazirike was on the Moses. Sure. So Wazirike, as a Moses,
he ran his race.
Yes, and then Joshua came, Nnamdi Kanu, and the approach, that leads me to the adage I gave to you. His approach was not too correct, let me end it that way, for the sensibilities of elders of the land. He was a bit, skating on court, in his radio and all that. So that pissed off the cream of the Igbo elite society. But a people who are in search of, because what brought the war hasn't ended. The elements that brought about the war hasn't ended. The same marginalization, the same thinking, although we too are also part of our own problems. One. So we Igbo generally are also part of their big problem. Now, but that thing that led to the war hadn't ended. And so you see that cold action to it. Now, anywhere would you say actually that Ndi Igbo had been properly brought in or harmonized into the Nigerian political setting? Can you rightly say all those? So the young men are seeing it. The young men are seeing it. And okay, what would you say about where an Igbo young man will be expected, a boy, will be expected to score 300 in JAM to pass, to get into the university? Why his brother up there, even if it is 29, you're there. So so those things that were done to their fathers, the iniquities are now visited upon them, even at this generation. So you see that cold, and that is what is making it difficult. The election just, you know what, the fate of the Igbo in Lagos for standing on their feet to support whom they wanted. Do we get back to the obedient issue? Which way Nigeria, according to Sonny Okosa, when you look at all this? So now Nnamdi came. The agenda was, as a journalist, my perception of what happened was that the last president needed to placate the wills and wishes of his Fulani people. And so bringing the head of Nnamdi Kanu like the head of John the Baptist to Herod will placate them. And seeing the court thing, how many times would a man be pronounced free in the court for him to be free? So when you look at that, you ask yourself, oh, really, are we actually together here? Are we following the law? But from what you're also seeing now, you find out that too many bad water, not only water, bad water must pass under the bridge and smell it.
Oh, wow.
So with these few points of mine, I want to say here that Ndo Haneze, there is a movement for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. But some of these things, the political class will not want it to be made public so that it doesn't affect their political fortune. I don't buy that story that they are part of it. For instance, right now, yesterday, the President General going out stated it. And the governors are also coming together for that. That's the good news. The governors whom were thought to be actually the stumbling blocks, this crop of governors are rallying to ensure, and I also agree in total, that his release will bring about a relative calm in the land. Because why are we talking about the younger generation? They are the ones who feel bad. Okay? And all these things that you're hearing about ESN is not me or my fellow elders that do all those things.
Wow. I told you you're an encyclopedia, but you wouldn't believe me. And now you have proven that you are actually one. Thank you so much, Nze Okmane Nkama Jr., for your insights and in-depth perspective. All right, thank you so much. Don't forget, New Day continues right after this break. I'm still Chigichi Agorom. Thank you so much from Enugu Studios. Bye for now.
It's a pleasure.